you don't think it can happen to you.
The hit-and-run chase in California, a motorcycle rider witnessing a driver slam into several cars and then speeding away.
It can happen to you within seconds, a blink of an eye.
Tonight about the man suspected of killing a woman in a hit-and-run and his plan to evade justice.
When you take your eyes off the road for just seconds, when you're driving your car, oh, yes, it can happen to you. See, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When the sands of time will run out within your hourglass.
New at 10, a hit and run caught on video, and now a teenager and his family are looking for the driver who took off.
He was a victim of a distracted driver hitting the road while riding his motorcycle going 65 miles per hour. He nearly lost his life. Now on a crusade to help save lives and prevent someone else from becoming a victim, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now the host of this podcast, it's Howard Drescher.
All right, welcome to another show of DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, DistractedDB. And you can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and TuneIn. Use the keyword DistractedDB. Okay, so we have a very interesting show. We have a good part of the show, that's toward the end of the show today. We have a bad part of the show. Again, that is going to be right in the beginning. So we're going to hit off running really fast. And first off, to let you know, as you know, that the summer is pretty much over right now. Everybody's pretty much going back to school. Drivers, I just plead that you guys slow down. Slow down around schools because you should slow down and obey the laws anyways. I drive up and down the 15 freeway here in California, and the speed limit is 70 in certain areas. I'm doing 70, maybe 75, and I've got people tailgating me, and then when I move over to the slowest lane, they're blowing past me going 80, 90, if not 100. It is insane out here. And I'm hoping that my friends here in California, the highway patrol officers that peruse down the 15 freeway, actually go ahead and start to take notice of the situation down there because it is going to be kind of dangerous and eventually something is going to happen. And if something happens, there's going to be a crash and it's going to be a long SIG alert. And the SIG alert here in California is anything that can stop traffic for 30 minutes or more if there's a crash that's involved. And there are hardly any exits. Some crashes, and I hearken back to the time when that one California Highway Patrol officer his name escapes me right now. I wasn't even going to really talk about this topic right now. But when he was killed on the side of the road, it was about 5 hours to clear the whole road. And trust me, it's not a pretty sight. There are hardly any exits once you get through a certain area of the 15 freeway. There's hardly any exits, and you're stuck. And, the temperatures are cooling down a little bit. It's not so bad now, but eventually, it could happen in the summertime. And people are stuck, they're miserable, they're hateful, they're just totally bizarre on what's going on. You got kids in a car, people got to go to the bathroom, there's people pulling off on the side of the road, trying to get around you that is in the road and on the highway, and yet it just never ends, that the stupidity of people that causes these kinds of crashes. So I'm asking each and every driver who listens to this podcast show, tell somebody about this podcast show. Tell them to slow down. It's not worth it. It's not worth your life getting to someplace 5 minutes faster than you would have if you just drove the regular law-abiding speed. And trust me, it isn't worth it. And when you start tailgating people and you start zigzagging in and out between 3 different lanes, I drove home the other day and I seen these guys driving, came up behind me really fast and moved over to the right. And then he went in front of me over to my lane, in the middle of my lane, which is lane number 2, went to number 3, around another car, back over to 2, back over to 1, and back over to 2 again, and just took off. He could have caused an accident, and, God willing, God preventing, if he will, anything from happening. It doesn't need to happen this way, but yet it still does. And it just baffles me that these kinds of things still continue to happen, and they're still going to continue to happen. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Again, I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com. And, of course, now this podcast show. Quite honestly, I really had no kind of opening monologue. I just wanted to really get into the stories that I was talking about and kind of put my monologue more toward the back. But usually when I get started and just starting just to say something, I don't like the start of my show. I think that's the problem. The start of my show, I don't like it. I do the same monologue in the beginning. I say who I am, how you find my shows, all this. I know that's kind of important. Branding myself is important. But it's really about getting into these stories and letting people know there are dangers out there on the freeway. All right? And it's just something that has got to be changing because it is terrible. There's hit and runs. A Good Samaritan killed the other day, helping 2 kids. We'll get into that story a little bit later. And finally, some good news out of a story that I got from ABC 10. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't really know where ABC 10 came from, but it's got to be here in California, maybe up near San Francisco area. They had an award that honors the top California Highway Patrol officer, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. That's our feel-good story for, I would say, for the day, because quite honestly, there's not really that many good feel-good stories, seems like, in the news anymore. Let's try to create one today. Let's make it happen. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I will be back right after this.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about going for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Hey, there's no way you can hide it. If you drive drunk, they're gonna find you. So stop kidding yourself.
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
Sir, have you been drinking this evening?
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
They will catch you and arrest you. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, welcome back to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course I do want to give out a couple of shout outs to some people, and I will do that on Facebook and Twitter. The ones that have started following me, I got some brand new followers, and I appreciate them. On Facebook, you can get me at DistractedDB. Again, you can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and TuneIn. So probably sometime tomorrow morning, just after this show actually gets posted, there are some people out there that I want to go ahead and give a shout out to, and I'll do that on Facebook and Twitter, and I appreciate them for following me on DistractedDriversBusted.com. I got some numbers but I don't have them actually present with me right now. Again, I'll post these on Facebook and Twitter. The new followers I got, the demographics that I got, there are a lot of 35 to 55 people that are listening to me. I need to get really the 18 to 35 range to start to listen to this podcast show, and I think it will help out immensely with a lot of situations. All right, here is a story that I got from KTLA Channel 5 here in Los Angeles, and this happened actually a couple of days ago. I know I keep saying I want to continue doing some more podcasts. I think in October, I'm going to be more freed up a little bit more, so I can go ahead and actually, produce a couple of more podcasts per week, get maybe back up to 2 or 3 a week. And I appreciate everybody who's been asking me. I go for 1 week, miss a week, go a week, maybe 2 weeks. I miss it, and I apologize for that. That is all on me. And I'm just kind of tied up doing some other loose ends, if you will. And hopefully in October, that will lighten up just a little bit, and I can get back to my normal routine of knocking out a couple of podcasts. I know several people have been asking me, are you okay? Is everything good? And I think in October, there's a couple of people that I'm going to be reaching out. There's a lady that I've been chatting with a little bit. Hopefully I can get in touch with her again. I want her story to be told, because her story is just the same as everybody else's, but the thing is, it's her story, and we'll get into that. And there's a couple of other people that have been reaching out to me that wanted to be a guest of mine, and we'll get into that in just in a couple of shows here in the next couple of weeks. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Again, this story comes from KTLA Channel 5. There is nothing worse to me than having people injured by a hit-and-run driver. Look, as a hit-and-run driver, how stupid are you? They have your license. They got your registration probably in your car. They contact DMV. They get all your information. They get your address. You can run. Now, if you end up stealing a car and you do something like that, it's a little harder. But yet, they can still catch you sooner or later. Because the thing is, you're not thinking about, they have cameras everywhere. And it's amazing how close these cameras can be and get a hold of people. All right, here's the story from KTLA. 7 injured after a multi-car crash, again, caused by a hit-and-run driver. And what did the hit-and-run driver do? Yeah, stopped after the crash, and after all his excitement that he went through, or she went through, decided to run. It was maybe a possible police chase at start. We'll get into that right here with KTLA.
We are following some breaking news now out of Baldwin Hills. Several people are hurt after a multi-vehicle crash.
Gil Lavis is up in Sky 5 with more details for us. Gil, what happened?
Well, Sam and Courtney, you're looking at the intersection of Potomac and Obama Boulevard. Let me zoom in here. This is the 3600 block of South Potomac. That's what the address the LA City Fire gave us. It's a 4-car accident following what we're hearing is of a police pursuit. We're working to get that confirmed, but you can see 4 cars there in that intersection there. One overturned, let me zoom in and show you that. One overturned in this front yard, making contact with the home. I can tell you that at this point, LA City Fire is saying they have 7 patients being treated and transported to a local hospital. LAPD is saying that this is a hit and run, and the person involved in that hit and run is 25 to 30 years old, a 220-pound male with dreadlocks, light shirt and dark jeans, and said to be armed and dangerous. Last seen north of this scene right now, but LAPD is searching for that individual. Right now, LA City Fire and LAPD investigating this terrible crash here. As I show you once again, that car overturned in that neighborhood right there against that house, I should say. And again, 7 patients at this point transported to local hospitals in unknown condition. That's the latest overhead up in Sky 5. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Hopefully they will all be okay.
All right, and again, I want to thank KTLA Channel 5 for allowing me to use the sound. Look, it's eventually going to happen. People are going to end up getting their car stolen. Obviously, their police pursuit. Guy gets away, ends up crashing into several different cars. The hardest thing for me to understand is why these kinds of incidences still happen. Are we not tough enough on the criminals? Because if we end up taking some of these guys and actually locking them up without slapping them on the wrist, $1,000 fine, and sending them on their way, they're not going to come back. They're going to probably commit the same crime again, maybe a month or so down the road. And yet, maybe this time it'll be worse. Maybe somebody else will end up getting killed. So I am pleading to the judges and the district attorneys and the law enforcement officers, and I know that you all do great jobs, but the times have come where we have to change our laws a little bit. We have to protect the innocent. We have to protect the innocent. We cannot continue going down the road protecting the perpetrator because it's not working. It is not working. It's getting worse. It's like all these smash and grabs that are happening. You end up arresting one or two of the people that are involved in that. They get out. They do it again. You're not helping anybody out. Somebody's going to lose their life. And I've said it before. It's tough. Families are involved. We need to toughen up the laws a little bit. Now, I don't know what we need to do as far as toughening up the laws. Rewrite the laws again. Because I'm going to guess that some of the laws that we have that deal with, these hit and runs, they were maybe back in the 80s, maybe the 70s, maybe the 90s, I'm guessing, but probably not much more than that. And if that's the case, let's change it up a little bit. Let's make something happen. Because quite honestly, it serves absolutely no purpose that we still continue to do laws that don't evolve with our times. You're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'll be back right after this.
You're listening to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Now, back to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast.
All right, welcome back to the DistractedDriversBusted.com podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, DistractedDB. You can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and TuneIn. And here's a story. Every now and then, it just drives you crazy when you hear about it. This came out of Tampa Bay, out there in Florida. And to be perfectly honest with you, there are good people out there. There are good people out there that want to make a difference, that want to make a stand for what is right. Let's do the thing that's right, and let's get it done right. A man that was helping two kids that were injured in a car crash. That Good Samaritan was unfortunately killed. And quite honestly, he was out there helping a 15-year-old and I think his younger sister that were involved in a car crash as a 15-year-old was driving himself and his sister to school. Now, I don't know the laws in Florida. I don't know what the driving age is to get a permit or anything, but I'm kind of thinking something in my head. 15 is probably not the number that is legal. This story comes from Fox 13 News, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Tonight at 10, the family of this 34-year-old man is now planning his funeral after he died a hero. Brandon Sanders stopped to help a 15-year-old and his 12-year-old sister who were involved in a crash in Lake Wales, but he was ultimately killed by a hit-and-run driver. Fox 13's Jennifer Veglas is in our studio tonight, and Jennifer, you actually spoke with Brandon's family. How are they remembering him?
Yeah, Brandon's mom tells me he was just starting to really enjoy life. He always had a smile on his face, and he loved to make people laugh. When he never showed up for work this morning, they knew something wasn't right. Tragedy on the corner of State Road 60 and County Road 630 this morning. Not one, but two crashes. The first, airlifting 12 and 15-year-old siblings to the hospital. Another, killing 34-year-old Brandon Sanders, who tonight is hailed a hero. The Polk County Sheriff's Office says it happened around 6 a.m.
A 15-year-old guy, did you hear what I said? He was 15, was driving his 12-year-old sister to school.
They were in this white Traverse without an adult when they turned in front of this red pickup, colliding into it. The 50-year-old driver left with minor injuries. The 12-year-old girl in critical condition with a head injury. Her brother with minor injuries. Brandon Sanders' family tells me he was on his way to work from Melbourne when he pulled over to help the children.
A 2012 Honda van then strikes the red pickup truck that's already been involved in the crash, knocks the red pickup truck into the Good Samaritan and kills him.
The driver and possible passengers of the Honda Odyssey then jump out and run into the nearby woods. Images from Sky Fox show the mess of the scene they left behind.
It turns out it's a scrapped vehicle out of Arizona.
Polk deputies deploying their aviation team and canines searching for them. All while tonight, two families are left to pick up the pieces. Now, the Polk County Sheriff's Office needs your help tracking down those who took off. If you have any information, be sure to contact Crime Stoppers for a $5,000 reward.
All right, and again, I want to thank Fox 13 News for allowing me to use the sound. How in the heck, for one, is there a 15-year-old driving a 12-year-old girl to school? Both of them were heading to school. Again, I don't know the laws in Florida, but I'm going to suspect that driving at the age of 15 is probably not permitted without an adult in the car. And again, for the Good Samaritan, he died a hero, helping those kids. And here we are, just thinking about what would have been if he saved those kids and never got hurt. It would be the talk of the town. Now it's a talk of the town for a different reason. There's no celebration there. There's nothing. Sadness and sorrow, that's what you have. And for this, you wonder why. A guy that decided to take action and help somebody the way that it should be. He's not here because somebody else was negligent. And then what happened after the second crash and the Good Samaritan got killed? The two people in the vehicle got out and ran. Why? Well, I think they did say that the vehicle was kind of a scrapped vehicle. Probably shouldn't have been on the road, stolen, or whatever the case might be. I'm not really sure. But it kind of sounded like the police officer that was describing it was indicating that it shouldn't have been on the road. And now, a good Samaritan, a good guy who did the right thing because he stepped up and took action when he saw something wrong, is now no longer with us. It makes me think. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher. All right, when we come back, tell you what, let's not take that last commercial break. ABC 10, I'm not exactly sure where they're located. I think they are somewhere up in San Francisco. Well, there was a top California highway patrol officer that was honored. And the company, the group MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, honors top cop in California. We have some good news today. That other story still has me shooken up a little bit. But here's the story. And again, this story comes from ABC 10, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
I was very happy. It's a great honor to receive something like that.
Note 11, California Highway Patrol Officer Antonio Galindo in the Stockton Division was just named top cop in Northern California by Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
That day, that room was filled with officers that are doing the best they can to keep people safe. And I'm just happy to be a part of that group.
Each year, family members of victims of DUI incidents join Mothers Against Drunk Driving in saluting officers from across the region for their heroic actions throughout the year. Officer Galindo made 128 DUI arrests in the last year alone.
Unfortunately, I've seen the aftermath. I've seen the worst case scenario of what happens as a result of drunk driving. And I do what I can to stop it and make sure that good people are able to get home to their loved ones every night.
Matt says a drunk driver will actually drive impaired 80 times before being caught once.
It happens too often, too much, and we do everything that we can to stop it.
And that's why MAD wants the public to know about their free services.
MAD is here to give resources, referrals, support, court help, navigating the criminal justice system. And it's all free services all the time. We never charge for our services. And we find that it's very beneficial sometimes for people to just be connected with somebody who knows.
And Officer Galindo is doing his part as well to save lives. You may remember ABC 10 was there last year when California Highway Patrol Officer Alfredo Lopez, also in the Stockton Division, received the award for making the most arrests and taking 124 DUI drivers off the streets. Officer Galindo doing even better this year.
We're living in a time where people can summon a safe ride to their location with their cell phones. In 2023, there is absolutely no reason to drive while impaired.
It all comes as we're now in the 100 deadliest days of summer. As a matter of fact, Elk Grove Police just announced they're planning a DUI checkpoint this Friday. So please be safe on the roads.
All right, again, I want to thank ABC 10 for allowing me to use the sound. And thank you to the California Highway Patrol officer who just became the top California highway officer here in California. And thanks to MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because what they're doing is exactly really what everybody else should be doing, is just making sure that everybody gets home safely. Parents should talk to their kids about drinking and driving. Remember, I don't want to die today. Do you? Don't let anyone take the sands of time within your own hourglass. Until next week or the next show, I'll be back.